Hi friends, if landscapes and trees inspire you, you're in the right place. Today we're looking at merging them into the landscape and the three important components you can't ignore. We'll be using Aquapasto for the texture of the shed. Stay till the end because there's numerous tricks to help you on your journey. So let's get cracking. This is the photo I took a few years ago, and for those of you who know the land, this is at Minabe at the foot of the Snowy Mountains in Australia. I'm using Arches cold press paper and only 3 paints, which are French ultramarine blue, burnt sienna and raw sienna light, all by Daniel Smith. I've sketched it out and will have a copy available for you if you'd like to give it a go yourself. As a foundation, I'm laying in the first layer with a dilute mix of burnt sienna and raw sienna light for the bottom of the sky, and then laying in the ultramarine at the top. I painted this first layer wet on dry. My board is on a slight angle. This always helps with cleaner washes as the water travels down the page. Painting this on a flat surface would potentially make it a lot blotchier. And I want this area of the shed to be a little bit blue-grey. And the grass come up into that, so there's no defining line. And that's what makes sheds look good, is the fact that, they're not like a straight out box or anything. They have long grass all around them, all nice and interesting. The foreground, the bottom of the painting, is still very nice and damp, so here I'm adding strokes of burnt sienna for the layers of grass, and I can also lift out some of the beautiful blondie tufts of grass. And now it's best just to let this dry. Whilst the first layer is drying, we can think about how we're going to structure our landscape: depth, perspective and atmosphere. So this means we need to look at number 1, perspective, 2, tonal, and 3, temperature range within our colour scheme. And there's absolutely no doubt that the best way to go about this is to use a simple colour triad. All the trees and everything else in the photo is a different distance away from us, and we could see each and every item in a different plane. Planes are just like layers of landscape as we look into the distance. There's foreground, midground and distance. Each plane becomes a little hazier than the one in front of it. In this photo, there are 5 tree areas and they're all at different distances from us. And they all look the same, really, so it's our job as the artist to make them look a bit different. When the first layer dried, I added the trees behind the shed, but my camera glitched up. Luckily, I had a clip of my practice painting. The important thing here was to give them their basic shape, leave some gaps, and have them at a light to medium value because the foreground trees would be darker and the background ones would be lighter. The last tree in this section gets blurred out because there will be other trees painted on top of it. Now for another plane, and that's the tree on the right hand side, which is closer to us. I'm mixing a creamier mix of the raw sienna with a bit of the ultramarine blue. Now, although this mix still looks quite cool, it is in fact warmer than the trees behind it, so this helps with the perspective. But all we've got to do is remember to leave gaps. And as we come to the bottom of this tree, it can be darker. And while this paint is still wet, there's no sheen to it, it's damp, right? Now's the time to scrape in some light branches in the dark areas and then paint some dark branches into the gaps. And where your brushes end, it's really great to fuzz out the ends with your finger, or fingers ideal. So there's that tree. Now for the left-hand side tree. To make it a little more interesting, I'm bringing the tree forward a bit. so that it's not exactly in line with the right-hand one. I'm adding more raw sienna to this tree, but before I continue, I need to tell you I learned something from my study, and that is that I needed to keep a gap between the poplars behind and this tree. Studies are priceless, and they are the absolute best way to improve anything you're working on. In this scenario, gaps in trees aren't just for air or branches. Here the gaps actually represent the highlighted foliage. And then of course, as we approach down, here at the bottom it's got to be darker. So now we can have bigger grass blades because we're closer. So I'm doing them the negative way by pushing into them. I've washed my brush and I'm going to put in a few droplets of water here, combining some of those just a little bit and letting the water do its thing. Then I can come in with some darks, and the darks of course next to the lights. So there would be the highlighted part of the bush, and then comes the medium bit and the dark bit. So you see, gaps in trees aren't just for air or branches. Here the gaps actually represent the highlighted foliage. Now I can take my palette knife. This is all still a bit wet, but there are areas that I could scrape out of. If you go in when it's too wet, the paint will just creep back inside, but I'm quite happy with that. Now with a little bit of ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt sienna, I can come in with some darker branches. They can also have more burnt sienna in them here because they're closer to the front. And see how I have a branch there? I'm going to break it up. I'm just testing to see how dry the background is because I need to put in the back mountain. Now normally you'd think you put the mountain in first as the background. But what I find is that you can quickly build up too many layers of paint. So you can put the mountain in if you wipe out the tree area, or you can do it this way by putting the trees in first. I like this way, it works well. While we're waiting for the background to dry, let's go for those fluffy, soft, large grasses in the foreground. I'm splaying out my brush and then with clean water just dabbing in random wet marks here and there, and then picking up some raw sienna and a touch of blue and negatively painting around the creamy grasses that I lifted out earlier on. I'm doing this by pushing the colour into the creamy patch. I'm continuing on with the sienna grasses, and now I'm going up and down with my brush. What happens now is when I go down, I'm creating light grasses negatively, and when I push the brush up, then you've also got the dark grasses up. A few little dots like that, but now I need to just going to smudge them out with my finger. Now let's check on the composition. It's really important in a painting to keep the viewer's attention, so I'm thinking that the eye can travel from here, bit of something here, then this line suggests that our eyes can travel there, and then these branches can take us around the roof, and this line of trees can take us around the clouds and back down again. So they're all the things that we're aiming to do. If you're enjoying what you're seeing and have any questions about anything, leave a comment below, and it just may be worth a new video or at least a chat. The grasses in the foreground are still damp, and now's the time to put in their darker bits down at their roots. So pushing down into the light area in front of them will give us some light grasses, and upward strokes will give us the darks that we need within the grasses. Do you see why I love this brush so much? Because it's just kind of magic. And now for my trusty palette knife to do some detailed strokes within the grasses. Okay, so if I let this dry, it'll be safer and better for all concerned, and then we'll come in with the mountain and the big tree up here. I'm going to come in with the mountain now and just add a little bit of a slightly darker hill than the sky. At the moment it's all one thing. I don't want it to be much because I want it to be light in the background. I'm allowing for the tallest poplar to protrude beyond the hill and for the hill to be just slightly marked in. What I need in my hand is a slightly damp tissue so that I can wipe away where I need to. I've only made a stroke or two, then I'm washing my brush and blending out these few lines, and all of a sudden the hill's already there. So it's not much at all, and maybe just a teeny bit more in some spots. So I can just even go like that. Use my tissue as a masking point. And I purposely didn't go beyond that because that's where I'm putting my tree. Now I've washed my brush, and I'm wiping it, and I'm also going to pull a little bit out here and there just for variation. Right, that's good. And now coming in with the big tree here. You know what? I'm going to use my dagger striper. This one's from S&S Toll Master. But any other dagger striper will be great too. The reason I like it is because it can give me thick strokes, thin strokes, and everything in between. So it's a really good brush to have on hand. One of these trees is going to be set back, so it's going to be a bit lighter. And I'm going to do it like this. I can even put a piece of paper there and use it to mask out the tree in front. Makes it really easy. That's good like that. Come in a bit closer. Now looking at these branches, we want them to come out of the trunk all the way around, not just the sides. So if you look at this one here, it's going out the side. The steeper one looks more like it's coming out the back. That one now is coming out the side, and the very steep one will be coming out the front. Just depends where you start on the trunk and just make them steep. Now mixing a creamier paint for the tree closest to the shed, and it's also in front of the other, so it's darker. And using a piece of paper as a mask for the tree in front just helps my hand be a bit steadier, and I can press down on my brush. And remember, keeping gaps within the continuous line, having them a little bit dry brushed. See how this one's darker than that one? Now you can tell that it's in front of it. Over here, and a steeper one over here. So they are the ones that are coming in, this one towards us, that one away from us. And then these particular trees have foliage that is kind of at the end and a little bit above the branch. That's what I'm seeing. And across there. And we need some over there. But you know, one of the most important things and effective things is the space between the branches and the foliage. So now we can just pull in a few more branches from our zigzaggy lines, and then we'll be right. While the tree's still wet, I'm coming in with my cleaned and wet sumi brush, brushing over the tree at the edges of the paper about an inch in to fuzz it all out and make it softer. Got a lot of this dark on this side. We better put in some dark over here. Just a bit here and there will be enough. Now let's move on to the shed. We already have a bit of a shadowed side, but it's probably not enough. So, remember in the past how we used Aquapasto? I'm actually going to mix some Aquapasto for the shed. So I'm putting it here into my little palette and going to use a bigger brush, 1/2 inch flat brush. I'm going to mix a fairly creamy mix of ultramarine blue and a bit of burnt sienna. So we know we're going to get a very dark black type of mix, but we'll be able to scrape out. So let's put in, and as we come down towards the bottom, we need this to be broken like that because it's grass. I'm making all this dark, but I'm keeping the front all grassy. Now I'm going to use the palette knife, scrape in a few boards, and then there's one coming down. If it all starts to look a little bit on the dry side, just a really quick spray of water. If you'd like to see more tips and tricks on how to use Aquapasto, have a look at this video up here. It's an absolutely amazing product. You know, you can even help yourself. I could have put a little bit of masking tape just there and just there so that my shed is neater. And here's the opening. And it's starting to feel a little dry, so I'm wetting this patch with a brush, making it easier to scrape. And anyway, I need to make some downward strokes, so a little bit of water and some downward strokes. There. Now I can remove that, and when that's dry, we can come in with some darks. And on our roof, keeping this very, very light, just a few light lines like that. I'd like there to be some long grass by the side of the shed, so I'm ripping some paper into an irregular shape, and this will be my stencil mask. Now I can easily paint in the wall, and now the grass has a chance to grow. We're coming back to this. Well, let's leave it like that. Foreground is dry now, so it's time to add some fullness to these grass clumps. So I'm using my dagger striper to wet them through the middle and at the base, and then I can drop in some darker colour at the base of the clumps. Looking at these poplars here, I'm going to give them a smoother base down the bottom because they may be behind a little hill. This all helps with perspective and depth. There's a lot of red burnt sienna in the foreground, so I'm going to add a little to the right hand side. So to lead the eye into all this, a little bit of darker stuff in there, and a suggestion of a change of direction, and maybe a little bit of shadow behind here, and keep it a bit on the blue side. Having a little bit of Aquapasto in the shadowed paint has made it really easy to re-wet and then scrub out again. It just keeps reactivating no matter how many times you do it. And when this is dry, which it is a bit, I can come in with some darker blue, the burnt sienna, and it can be a bit darker in there. And a little bit on this side. And then when you get really finicky about little things like I do, you darken the branches at the top here, just underneath the foliage, and that helps it as well. Look. And I'm just highlighting some areas of the trunk. Now in this last little bit, these poplars here need to be a little bit stronger than they are. So the tonal value needs to be a little bit more, particularly on, the shadow side. So I'm just going to do little lines like this, and then a little bit of some trunks or branches like that. So that's one thing. What else was there? Like that. Oh yes, in Australia we have beautiful single gum trees that grow on hilltops, and we're going to do it like this. It has to be a very distant color, so it has to be a bit on the blue side, but I'm laying down a piece of paper so that I basically get a tree and we already have a bottom to them, except we want the shadow to go that way because the sun's coming that way, and they can be a little bit darker down the bottom. All right, so here, a great way to do distant tree. This is how they grow. They grow just really randomly here and there, one lonely tree at a time. And they might as well have a tree trunk. And it also shows how the land falls, so that's a really good thing. And here what I'd like to do is, see this here? We can soften a little bit of this trunk on this side for a little bit of 3-dimension to these big trunks. Putting in some water because I want it to be very subtle. So just a little bit of variation here in color. Particularly on the left hand side. And then you can always have 1 or 2 trunks. So I know we've literally covered a lot of ground here today, and I'm really interested in whatever questions you might have for us to explore further. And if you'd like to see how to paint some atmospheric poplars up close, Well, you might want to have a look at this video here. And I'll see you all next time.